This course is, I hope, exactly what it sounds like. Tips, techniques, and strategies for designing mobile user experiences. Some of what I say is intended to be foundational. Some will just tease you to go read the resources and explore more. But I hope much of it can be applied to your work directly and immediately with actionable guidelines, numbers, and best practices. If you're not a UX practitioner, you might think we're going to talk about colors, fonts, icons, and placement of items on the page. But that's UI. UX is so much more. And this course is going to cover the entire range of user experience impacting facets, from networks to phone hardware to demographics, all the way to information architecture, interaction, and yes, some interface design too. Most of all, I'm going to regularly circle back to people and how they interact with devices, have needs, goals, and objectives you have to keep in mind throughout the process of building your app, or website, or both. Individual videos in this course are mostly less than 10 minutes long. If you watch the whole thing end to end, it should take you less than about 2 hours. Naturally, I expect you to mostly watch them individually, then refer to the resources attached to each video, explore the topics I covered more deeply, and think about how it applies to your work before progressing to the next lesson. I'm going to say a lot of things about working with developers, designing for the way people work, and the history of technology, basically because I'm old. Years after I got into mobile was when the term feature phone was invented. I've been doing what we now call UX work since 1996, and mobile design since 1999. Yes, there were interfaces on mobiles, ones worth designing, and even web browsing on handheld devices years before that. There's absolutely opportunity galore today. But I got in a fun time, and early on got to design things like the first Google mobile search ever, work on the first music phone in the world, and create its accompanying music and app store before anyone had one we could just copy. Much of what I say comes not from the awesomeness and success in doing all this, but the failures, sometimes quite bad failures. This is why I share the information. We already know stuff that needs to be passed along and shared to make sure we're all doing the best possible job designing for our users and clients. Aside from mobile telecoms, I've helped build mobile websites such as weather.com and apps for companies like Hallmark, US Bank, and Cummins. I've designed, at least in part, 5 mobile browsers, and I've done stuff for plenty of startups that I'm still or not yet really allowed to talk about. But I know from this the heyday of innovation is not behind us. There's more cool stuff to do. I wrote a book on all this, have contributed to other books, write a column for UX Matters, regularly write for UX Magazine, and others. So I think about this a lot and encourage you not just to take one class and call it good, but put together a regular list of Twitter accounts, blogs, and magazines you like, from the resources I provide here so you can keep up on it as you progress in your career. If you're taking this course, you presumably understand that the coming of mobile devices means it's something you need to prepare for. But it's already here. There are more mobile devices than humans. Yes, over 7.2 billion devices in use. That's around 5.5 billion phones used by around 4.5 billion people. 63% of all the people on the planet have a mobile phone. Smartphones, you wonder? 2 billion of those. So still way under half. Computer sales are relatively plummeting. PC sales dropped 95% in 2013. Mobiles continue to grow, and for several years now have outsold desktops and laptops. If you heard that iPad sales are flattening, remember that's just one device by one maker. There were more tablets sold in 2014 than desktops and laptops combined. Expect 2 billion mobile devices to be sold in 2016. And even with all this scale in place, mobile use rates continue to grow rapidly. Mobile traffic grew 80% in 2013, and this is scale like has never been seen. 5 billion people saw an ad on their phone in 2015, more than any other media type. WhatsApp, just one service on mobile alone, has 1 billion active users. And don't get me started on MMS and SMS use rates. They put Facebook to shame. Which I believe, depending on the survey, as many as 2/3 of the people in the US only have a mobile internet device or prefer to use their mobile over a desktop or laptop, even when one is available right in front of them or in the next room. You won't be surprised at the rates in places like Kenya, where connectivity is generally only on mobile networks, are over 90%. On days when we're away from home or engaged with family, Thanksgiving and Christmas, over half of all internet traffic in the US now is from mobile. And on those days, handset traffic outweighs tablets 2 to 1. You want to make money? Contact your customers? Be in mobile. The old rule of thumb on ad response and direct mail was that 1% is good. Not far off that was for email campaigns or banners. But SMS or MMS campaigns, 30% respond, usually in a matter of seconds.
So, design for mobile, adapting to your user's environment, needs, and devices as you design your solutions on every platform. Wait, really every platform? Yes, smartphones are taking over, and Android is winning not just in total installed base, where iOS only has about 14% market share now, but in use rates across the board. But it's taking over from feature phones, which still matter, and for which your mobile website will be used. While we mostly care about this, we should also know what happened here, or here, and what happened in the 1940s, or the 1890s, because it had a huge impact on what we do with mobiles every time we use them today. That's because the technology of mobile and the businesses are not optimized for what we do with them, for digital wireless delivery of internet content. It's all still based on dedicated voice, billing per minute, and not incidentally the way mobile networks are not part of the phone network, so interoperative agreements, which cause delays in sending your SMS between networks, and make your bill real confusing too. Most devices that we care about, at least, can get a connection over Wi-Fi, but when I refer to connectivity through the rest of this course, I'm mostly going to mean cellular mobile radio, mostly because it's so ubiquitous that it's replacing traditional methods of communication. But I'm going to talk about it for a few moments here because it's so very different from the connectivity you might be used to getting in your home or office off wired or Wi-Fi Ethernet. Mostly, it's not at all a data network. Much of the world still dreams of 3G, but if we assume 4G LTE networks, the fundamentals, the infrastructure it's built around, are based on being mobile phone networks, and the system is run by phone companies. Data is an add-on, more and more integrated, but it's an add-on, and the whole network is a private thing bolted on top of the national phone company backbone, and only vaguely connected to the internet and other mobile networks, all this covered by complex contracts. You need to know that the network always knows where you are, at least roughly. This is intrinsic in the way it works. You're always tenuously connected, so push notifications work great and are efficient. There's no need for picking server poll times. The network knows where you are, so it can just push stuff to you. SMS, or text messaging, the primary push system, is not data. It works on any system and uses a very efficient and reliable channel, so pretty much always gets through. MMS, or picture messages, are not the same. They go back to sending their traffic through the data channel, so when your data's off, it doesn't work. Mobile networks are not very slow. 4G LTE is comparable to typical Wi-Fi speeds. It doesn't seem like that, though, because they have horrible latency. That's the time it takes between asking for data from a remote server and getting the information back. Every time you make a call to the server for that web page, it takes at least a quarter second to return a response. It could take several seconds. So if you build a 7.5 meg homepage full of pretty pictures, it is too bloated. But what really kills it is that it's also got 12 JavaScript calls, and 6 CSS files, and 22 images. Each of which, no matter how big they are, could take half a second or 2 seconds to get over the network. This is intrinsic in the physics of network topology and the way wireless works. It won't get much better. There are many of these assumptions we tend to make about networks, which are not true and which we need to account for all the way through the stack, right up to interactive and interface design. Latency can be avoided by carefully arranging components, even such as embedding CSS, JavaScript, and even images in the page. The impact can be reduced on the design side by reducing number of images or loading the most visible items first, loading previous content, or at worst, building in delay indicators so the user understands the system is working and it's not just being slow or breaking. We'll touch some more on these fallacies as we go through the lessons, but note that every network or radio technology is different from every other one. Bluetooth works nothing like cellular mobile networks, and BLE is not the same as Bluetooth. If building services that use these technologies, learn about them to take advantage of the way they uniquely work to assure they meet your needs, don't waste the user's time or their phone's battery, and therefore don't anger your users or get your company fired. Do you know how your phone vibrates? With a little motor and a counterweight. It's really very inefficient. Even the technology of tiny, seemingly inconsequential features like this you need to try to understand in order to make sure you don't do something, like use up the user's battery, that will result in a bad experience. I've mentioned the word feature phone a few times, and I'll mention it again, but you probably still dismiss all those users as hopefully old-fashioned. I would not. First, do only call it a feature phone. A dumb phone is a mobile phone, and hardly any exist. A feature phone has extra features, hence the name, like a camera, so it can do not just text messages, but send MMS. An internet connection to send those messages. Some actually have 4G LTE. A web browser, generally these days a good modern WebKit browser that won't present you any problems loading your page up on them. They can install apps. The old mainstay, J2ME apps, they do work. A few years ago, when Facebook still released their stats, they had over 80 million regular users of their feature phone app. I'll take 80 million users on any service I work on. Most of these devices actually come with apps like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pre-installed, so users don't have to go discover them. The phones can, of course, accept SMS. That's important because it has insane response times and rates. 90% of people read text messages they receive within a few seconds. Tell your marketing teams that. Feature phones have GPS and other location services. Some even have touchscreens, like this one, and if you haven't figured it out, yes, the phone on the left is a feature phone. A problem is, often the word touchscreen feature is used as an identifier for a smartphone. That's not the definition of smartphone. So it's hard to tell exactly how many of these various devices are actually in use, and if you look at your own stats, you should drill down and figure out what you're looking at so you know, or can guess at least, what kind of users you actually have. Most of all, remember, feature phones and cheap smartphones are low end, not old. These aren't people carrying around 10-year-old razors in their pockets. They're buying these phones today. At the core of everything I say is, as much as I've talked about technology and will do some more, designing for mobile is not about designing for phones, but people. Don't get caught up in any one platform or technology. One of the most common questions I get is, what phone do you carry? Well, I carry all of these. Clearly, not in my pockets all the time, but I'm signed into all of them as me, so they sit there and beep at me all the time. They're right next to me on the desk right now, or in my case when I travel. I'm not a fanboy or critic of any platform, because it's important that you design for whatever people actually use. I try to stay familiar, so sometimes I swap SIMs and try out, say, the BlackBerry Z10 for a few weeks again. I have another 50 or 75 devices in a cabinet next to me, because I've been doing the same for years. They get old and you have to switch them up and keep up on what the current technology is. Next, we'll start talking more about how people use the varying range of devices they actually carry, how they interface the technology of the computer terminals in their pockets.